Hey y'all. We are back with another episode of Mass Exodus Podcast. This is your girl, Sayuri Smith-Timmons. I am excited today to have an amazing lady with us today. See, when you find somebody who have the same heart as you for the same thing, it's like, you got to have them on the show. So I just want to again shout out Clubhouse, which we had already kind of been acquainted through a mutual person before, but still Clubhouse, right? You got to hear her talk on Clubhouse and just was like, yeah, we need her on. But before I get started, I'm going to go ahead and make an announcement. The announcement is Mass Exodus is now a part of Tag Team TV. TagTeamTV.net is the site. This is an internet network, TV network, and this podcast will be on there. So I'm so excited to announce that. Please go and check out the website for other episodes, all kind of stuff. And if you are looking to put anything out, let me know. Okay. So yeah. I'm so excited. Okay, so I'm gonna read y'all something about my guest. This week's guest is a lived experience expert on domestic sex trafficking. She is also the chief executive officer and founder of an organization called Sisters of the Streets. She holds the title of mother, motivational speaker, advocate, first responder, consultant, social media marketer, entrepreneur, and activist. Sisters of the Street focuses on empowering those impacted by sexual exploitation. She integrates her lived experience into her work by providing mentorship and resources to those desiring to transition out of that lifestyle, while focusing on empowering the community to be part of the solutions while identifying and addressing root issues that allow exploitation to thrive. Introducing my guest, Ms. Jaimee. Wait. What did I do? I just did something crazy. Jaimee Johnson. How do I? Oh my God, y'all. What? Yay, I did it.
There we go. Hi.
Hello. Oh my God, I'm so
How
excited
are
to have
you?
you on here. I'm reading your bio. I'm getting all excited. I'm like, see, this is why right here. Thank you so much for agreeing to come onto the podcast today. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. I'm
No, I
excited. I'm
appreciate.
a little under the weather, but I'm excited to. I think the conversation will have me feeling a little bit better. So I'm
Right. Well,
excited.
that's why I appreciate it so much because you are pushing through, and I know how hard that is. That could be terrible, but I'm really, really happy to have you here. And I'm getting excited just reading your bio. I'm like, yes, all of the things.
Isn't it funny?
So,
Our bios always like every time I still hear my bio and I'm like, oh, that sounds good. Like I wonder how that sounds. It still cracks me up every time I hear somebody read it because I'm like, it just sounds a lot. You don't always talk about yourself, so I'm like, okay,
yes,
yeah.
I get it. But you know what's crazy too? And I don't know about you, like, as a survivor, and just having thoughts so low of yourself at one point, it's kind of like, is that me?
Right,
Like,
you're like, wait, I did that. I do
right.
that.
I'm just
Yeah,
like, that's some stuff I would like. That's okay for y'all to say. That's okay for y'all to
yeah.
say.
It's
So
empowering. So
yeah, it is, and I'm really grateful. So I want to let you introduce yourself to the audience. Tell us about yourself.
well, outside of what I would describe myself as, I mean, when it comes down to first and foremost, I'm a woman of God. God has given me many chances beyond second chances that I could never even have fathomed. So, first and foremost, I'm a woman of God and a mother, and importantly, just a person about humanity. That's really all I'm about is just that humanity aspect and really bringing inclusion into our everyday lives in our world. So that's really just a little bit about me. I'm the CEO and founder of Sisters of the Streets, which is an organization that focuses on empowering those to be supported through their transitions out of their exploitation, if and when they choose to want to go into a different direction. And we do that through just mentorship and programming and support services, direct services, and just providing space for people to meet them where they're at and be able to go ahead and find new passions and new territory in their lives that they want to walk into. And we just want to be a support for that.
Wow, that sounds so good. That sounds a lot like what I do, and I've never heard anybody talk about this in this way. A lot of times people are talking about awareness and they're talking about the front part of it, and it's
Yeah.
kind of like who don't know about sex trafficking right now,
I'm
in
saying,
2021.
I'm like, look, there's awareness, and then there's just bandwagoning and just wanting something to talk about, and people forget that this is people's lives. These are people's lifestyles. This isn't something to be. We're not. Oh, how I got a call on my iPad. That was weird. Sorry. We're
It's okay.
not like we're not specimens like to be put under, like, our lives are not specimens to be put under a microscope to be like, oh, okay, this is a sexy topic right now. Like, let's all care about it and let's talk about it. These are people's lives, and the strength that it takes to transition and choose to transition your life into a different trajectory is a lot more than people just sharing a post or putting a poll up or doing a hashtag. And I think that it gets really exhausting, seeing all the awareness, and not all awareness is good awareness. Like, that's just, some people don't agree with that, but I don't think that all awareness is good awareness. It's like,
I'm gonna
okay,
tell
what's
you
the
something.
solution?
So I was at an event one time, and this guy was asking a bunch of questions, and so the questions he was asking, the same, and as a person who is I consider myself to be street smart. It's like I could see what I saw, but I couldn't tell you why I was saying it. I'm like, he's a business person. He doesn't like everybody's telling their stories and sharing and all of this, and their heart is, everybody's like, oh, and feeling sorry for people, whatever. And I'm like, whatever. This guy didn't care. He was just like, okay, so how much money is involved? And he was making notes. And he was talking, and he was just like, okay, so what exactly does the guy say to the woman to convince her that this is what she should do? Okay, and I'm like, so do you need somebody to like? And I was like, okay, are y'all? And people were answering the question, and I was like, do y'all not hear that this is kind of research for a business venture? This is not necessarily
Right.
care and concern for a survivor of it. He's not worried about even trying to get grant money on the export. He's wanting to go, because when people say stuff like, oh, this is a so and so $1 billion industry, what do you
People's
think that
antennas
means?
go up. Yeah,
Like,
people's
what do you think that means to people? Like, I don't even know. I don't really know what that's supposed to do, because as a person who is a business minded person, it's kind of like, I want to go where the money is. And so for you to continually say that, it was very bothersome to me. And
Yeah, it's
then
more
people were
enticing.
answering, yeah, it was that,
Yeah.
it was too much. So for people who are watching, they probably are very familiar with my story, my transition story. It took me 3 good times to leave. I want to know about your transition story. However much you're willing to share. I mean, very brief and not very detailed, but because, and I want people to understand, like we just said, like you just eloquently put it, it's hard to leave, and it takes a lot. You
Yeah.
know, it takes a lot. So I want to know what it took for you.
It took about 8 different rock bottoms, and it really took me being real tired. Like, it wasn't like, I think people like to hear, and some people have those stories of like that overnight, like, I got swooped out in a sweep, or I got, like, the police came in and saved me, or this person came in, and that happens, in some
Mm-hmm.
people's experiences. For me, I think that there's a difference between, I think, as we're talking about awareness, there's a big difference between an experience with sexual exploitation or human trafficking and a lifestyle of sex trafficking, or what I knew it as prostitution. I didn't identify with the term human trafficking. So when I'm seeing resources for somebody that is trafficked, I'm not going to call that number to get support, because I'm not corresponding the two, of what I'm living in my life. The verbiage was off. And so for me, it was a lifestyle. It was years and years of being accustomed to a certain lifestyle. And in order to break that mentality of that fast life and living however I wanted to live, and kind of living by no rules, and being able to get money whenever I didn't have money, and kind of rebel against the world, or me and my pimp against the world at that time. It was very gradual too. I had to keep hitting a rock bottom and keep being real done with what I was doing, just to go back into what regular society, and realize how difficult it was to go back into and amongst, the people I grew up with, into areas that I wasn't comfortable with. I was now comfortable with the lifestyle that I had been living. And so that's where my pull was to. And so every time I meant it, when I wanted to go home and get out and be with my kids, I meant it from the bottom of my heart. But then as the time passes and I see how much work it takes to get reintegrated back into normalcy, or what I knew as normalcy, before I had, gotten into the game, it the work seemed a lot harder than the benefits. And so I just kept going backwards. And so it just really took for me to get so tired, where it wasn't even like, this is a choice of if I want to have this lifestyle anymore. It was a choice of like, if I don't get out this lifestyle, I don't want to live anymore. And so I really had to get to the point where I was suicidal, um, needing any and every type of substance that I could use to just cover and get through my day. And when I got to that point, and the cherry on top was not being able to talk to my daughters, not being able to see my daughters, um, that I literally was, my heart was breaking, and it was throwing me into physical ailments, physically making me sick. I was so stressed out from the life that I was living that I just had to make a change, or it was going to kill me, or I was going to kill myself, or I was going to kill somebody else. And that's just really what it was going to come down to. And so I had to make a choice to do different if I wanted, um, to have a chance to be a mom, and to have a chance to live.
That's that's epic. Like I just want to share with you because me and you we've never talked to each other. We've talked in the same rooms with each other.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to say that it's so similar. It's so parallel. Like it took me three good times, and like you said, like I just agree with that. And it's crazy because like even just talking about my story to people sometimes when people ask you the guided questions like so were you they want to give you the answer and you say yes or no and it's kind of like
Yeah.
y'all trying to make me forget what I actually did, like, or why I actually made my moves that I made.
Yeah.
But like you said, it's like I was addicted to my lifestyle. It wasn't no addiction to no drugs. It wasn't addiction to no liquor or nothing. I might have smoked weed or whatever because my back was hurting and because I have back issues. I have chronic back pain. I have issues, and I was losing my mind. We don't talk about that, but
Right.
it was like just dealing with the people. Like when I tell people about the homicidal spirit and the suicidal spirit, like how it makes you just want to kill something. People laugh, I guess it's because of the way I say it, but I mean it. And for you to say that, I'm like, I'm glad that it wasn't just me because
Oh no, girl.
I was dead
I
serious.
No, it was to the point where I somebody's poor grandpa got it bad one time. He didn't do nothing to me, but at that time he represented just a lot of trauma in that moment. He represented every customer that I had that ever did anything that I didn't want them to do to me, ever robbed me, ever raped me, ever did any of those things. And for some reason in that moment he did or said or he smelled it. I don't know. It was a trigger, and I seen everything in him. And when I almost killed that poor old man, I was like, thank God God flashed. It had to be God. I didn't
Right.
know it was God at that time. But that's when I was like, I didn't necessarily get out right then, but that was one of the moments where I was like, oh yeah, you got to do something different, because something is going to happen that you can't take back, and
Right.
it's going to take you out of your daughter's lives. I wasn't in a sane place to think about generational traumas or like the cycles, but
Mm,
realize looking back now, subconsciously I knew that if I continued to make certain choices, that was basically putting my daughters on a platter to be right into the cycle that I was already caught in. You know what I mean? And
Oh
so
yeah.
subconsciously I had to make a decision. It granted it took time, but years and years of time, but it happened, and it had all those little moments, those homicidal thoughts, those suicidal thoughts, those um just those evil thoughts that felt evil in that moment but really weren't evil. They were just trauma, and they were just triggers. um they all had to happen in order for me to get to the point where I was like, look, I can't do this anymore, and really mean that, you
Right.
know.
Right.
Yeah, you definitely was not alone in that, because like I said, somebody's grandpa got it bad one day, and I felt bad. I was like, oh my gosh, if I would have killed this old man, like what was I going to tell the ambulance? Like what like what was I, because people are not, we don't live in a trauma informed society. Like we don't live in a society that is trying to come into situations to understand um people's backgrounds, or like what they're not asking why did this happen. They're asking, why'd you do this? Or they're asking, or they're not really even asking, they're accusing. They're not looking at both sides. They see a crime, and they're not looking at people's traumatic past. They're not looking at the decisions that led people to make those in the moment decisions. And so I'm sitting there like, oh my goodness, like I could have just been in prison for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Um, so I need to do
You know
something
what?
different.
Have you seen that movie Monster?
Yeah. Ooh, there's a couple scenes in there that I can't, I
Girl.
can't get out my head. I'm like, you probably already know what I'm talking about, but there's a
Woo!
couple scenes where I'm like, they stick in my mind, and I'm like, oh my goodness, she did that. What's her name? Charlize Theron,
Yeah.
whatever her name is. She
Yeah.
did that though, but that's a
I
perfect
wept.
example.
I
Mm-hmm.
wept. And it's crazy because I was still in it. I was still a dancer when I watched that in the movies, and I bawled my eyes out during a very inappropriate scene where everybody else was kind of, like, people looking like, what? And I mean, I was funeral crying. Like
Yeah,
it was so validating, but it was horrifying because I'm like, this is a serial killer.
yeah,
I'm like, and I'm so much on her side right now because
right.
y'all, and I'm like, y'all
You're
don't
like, I feel it.
understand.
I
Right. I'm
feel
like, y'all see what she is dealing with and going through, but at the same time, she's still, because it was based on a true story. Like, that lady was the first serial killer, like, electrocuted.
yeah.
I'm like, they killed that lady. They didn't care about nothing.
Yeah, yeah, and
But
I
yeah.
think that's something that I'm really passionate about, is like is us as a, like when I speak and when I talk about the issue of I say I'm a lived experience expert on domestic sex trafficking, because that's what people want. That you have to have a title, right? Like when you're
Hmm.
going to present yourself, you got to have a title, but really it's way deeper than that. It's not about sex trafficking. I'm not going to talk about sex trafficking. I'm going to talk about and speak and have conversations around just that, of how do we see and familiarize ourselves and identify with the person we think we have nothing in common with, those serial killers or those pedophiles or whatever labels people put on people, a pimp, a buyer, whatever, a prostitute. What do we have in common with that person? Not in my actions in my life, but
Yeah.
deep down in the vulnerability lanes. Like it could be as simple as your mom didn't show up to your basketball game when she said she was, and you felt from that moment a sense of you weren't worthy enough, or you weren't good enough, or you've always been seeking validation from your mom. That might not look the same as your mom abandoned you, but those feelings are the same. And so
It
when we
is.
can identify those in each other, just how you were able to identify characteristics in a serial killer because of the traumas, that's when we can rehumanize people, and that's when we can really come to talk about awareness and solutions and all of this stuff, all this statistical stuff for like 80% of people are sexually abused, and did it, like, what is that? We're not helping nothing. What are we doing to relate to each other as human beings so we care about what happens to the next person? Because that's really what is going to allow us to expand into solutions, right? If I care about you as a person because I relate to you as a person, I'm going to care how society and how systemic things and how racism and how sexism and all these things impact you because I look at you as me, right?
Yeah.
And we don't do that. We don't live like that as humans anymore, or if we ever did, but we definitely don't do it right now in our day and age.
Yeah, it's to me, I feel it, it's about I was actually talking about this the other day about rehumanization. Like, you talk about people as if they are a thing, and not a person just based on, how you were raised. I was actually in a class that were talking about, we was in a racial reconciliation
Mm,
conversation. And I was just like, just fighting to be humanized is very exhausting. Like when people look at you as a thing or a it or whatever, and they're taking away your humanity,
right,
that is that much more work to even interact with other humans, because it's like, you don't see me as a human, I have to work to be a human to you.
right,
Then you have to like sympathize, and it's like the peer, the like, and it's hard to have peers, um even working with peers, because some people thrive off of the pity, and they thrive off of the just the attention and stuff. And that's what I wanted to talk to you about, because when we were on Clubhouse, you were on stage, and you were speaking about the importance of survivors having a voice. So could you talk about that for a minute?
I mean, it to me it's common sense, not just survivors of sex trafficking, right? But like if you're dealing with any social issue, which sex trafficking is a social issue, if you're dealing, the people that are impacted have to be in the forefront of trying to come to find the solutions. How else do we learn about what works and what doesn't work? How else do we find out how to create programming and resources and direct service that work if we're not listening to the people that need it the most or have had to go through it without it to get to the other side and now can look back and be like, okay, this is what would work. There's no way to learn what is going to work for a human being through a book. Now, people can write books about their experiences or about their education or about the things that they have put work into. I'm not downplaying any type of traditional education at all, but there is something about lived experience that has to take center stage. And you cannot do things for a population without the population that has been impacted. It just doesn't make sense to me. And so, lived experience experts, people with lived experience, survivors, people, and I don't want to say just survivors because at the end of the day, when we're talking about sex trafficking, there's three prongs to that issue. There's the buyer, there's a person that's profiting, and then there's a person that's being exploited, right? And so we talk a lot about the survivor voice. And people have worked very hard to get the survivor voice at the forefront, and I applaud the work that has had to happen and continues to happen. But at the same time, we also have to be open to the conversation that there's two other parts that need to be prevented from people becoming those parts as well. If we only are addressing the person that is exploited, we're only going to be able to prevent people from becoming exploited. And there's still going to be exploiters and buyers. And so we have to also address the fact that those people are human too, and they have experiences and they have vulnerabilities that project them into becoming the person that is either buying, purchasing, or selling the services that are being bought. And that is all a part of the cycle of exploitation. And so putting people's lived experience voices in the center and paying them for their expertise is a huge part of the solution, if not the key component to the solution as far as on the resource side goes.
Yeah, I agree. So I want you to please talk about, what is it that you think the buyers and the exploiters need as well?
Man, I mean, everything that the survivors need, um, that whole list, plus some. When we're talking about, and this is not to say that exploiters and buyers are only male, but let's just say for, entertainment purposes, we'll talk about the male population. When we're talking about male population, if you look at our society and look at how men do not have safe spaces to be vulnerable, very rarely And when they are, that's why it's so out of the box when you see a man that is emotionally secure in himself to cry or to come forward and say, that he's experienced certain things in life, without society projecting some type of negative characteristic on him. Um, we don't have safe space for men to come forward and say that they're dealing with certain triggers and traumas and they've dealt with certain abuse. And so what happens is they are told that they have to suppress it, and that suppression often manifests in things that look abusive and look exploitive and very much are. But also, the same way that we identify how prostitution may be a choice of no choices, right? Or a societal issue, or I'm sorry, systemic issue, or a racial issue, which it very much is. We're looking, we're not mirroring that to the buyers and the exploiters. We're not recognizing the fact that they had an adolescence and a childhood as well, that they're somewhere down that line, they're developed the mentality that it was okay to objectify, it was okay to profit off of somebody else's pain, and it was also okay to use sex as a basically a human right, and if you can afford it, you are obligated to it, or you are owed it, at the expense of somebody else's body and somebody else's lack of human right. And so we need to have spaces for men to come forward to be able to speak. We need to have spaces for women to be able to come forward and speak without being framed angry or being labeled um, emotional, or being labeled all these different things that make us kind of shell up and not want to share with people. First and foremost, we need spaces for people to come forward and recreate society and how we have really adapted society into becoming this callous, like, just people aren't my business. What people go through is not my business, when really people are our business. So first and foremost, men need a space, men and women, but I'm speaking on men right now. Men need a space to come forward, be vulnerable, be safe in their vulnerability, and they need resources. Men need resources, especially marginalized populations. They need equity and they need opportunity to be able to have the same choices before they get put into the system, before they get labeled predators, before they get labeled sex offenders, before they get labeled traffickers or pimps or drug dealers or gangbangers. They need to have an opportunity to have the same choices and options as the white communities do, or as privileged communities do. They need to have options to have education, without having to go jump over hoops, hurdles, and swim through lakes and oceans and go through fires just to get the same opportunity as the next person who's got lighter skin. Like, there needs to be equity first and foremost. There's just so many things that need to happen. There needs to be resources for single fathers. There needs to be resources that are accessible to men for housing. Men that come out of the system need to have support to be able to actually have a second chance to come into society because they've already paid their dues, right? They need to not be thrown back into the system or given choices up front as young men, that if you look a certain way, you only good for A, B, and C. You can be an athlete, you could be a drug dealer, you could be a gangbanger, you could be a movie star, or you could be a pimp. If you're only given those options from a very young age, what do people expect you to do? So there's so many things that we lack as a community in general for women. um they're pretty much non-existent for men. There's no housing, there's no financial aid, that there's no resources that are being put into young men, in their hands for them to have a fair opportunity before, like I said, they get thrown into a system that is meant for them to stay within that system. And we basically set people up for failure. We throw pornography into men from a very young age, and women. Again, I'm speaking towards the male population, as men, male buyers and male exploiters. We throw pornography into their faces from a young age and then get upset when they are overwhelmed with fetishes and over sexualization, hypersexualization, objectification, and that's their mentality. We throw in this toxic masculinity where you got to be a man. The more women, the worse you treat women, the more of a man you are. We do this from a very young age to young boys. We tell them that their value is in what their car looks like, or how much money they got in their pocket, or you know, how many women they can have sex with, or whatever the case is. And we then get upset at the choices that they make once they're of age to make those choices. So we create a society that we like to complain about. And you know, I could go on and on and on, but I'll stop there. But we need everything. Like, people need everything, and we don't have it. We create this, we create, like I said, we create society that we then like to complain and demonize people for. And
Mm-hmm.
then we like to try to lock people up in this system of incarceration that is not rehabilitation. We all know is not rehabilitating anybody unless that individual chooses to rehabilitate themselves through all the adversity. And it's just this vicious cycle. Like, we don't want things to be better because we make a lot of money off of people's trauma, and
Right.
that's just what it is. We live in trauma porn culture, and that's just what it is. If people actually get better, then guess how many people out jobs and out this big old money, pharmaceutical all this stuff, like all this stuff goes down the hill due to greed, like the greed that thrives that, right? If we get people better and we get people healthy and we get people thriving, too many people that are benefiting off of our traumas are going to be out of jobs and have
Right.
to be on the same level as us and just be not about the money and be about the actual spiritual and that connection and that human connection. And people don't want to do that because, God forbid, we be a society about more than money, you know?
Right. It's crazy to see that people have the same attitude because I thought, that was my addiction. Was money. I mean, not really my addiction. My addiction was the freedom to do what I want to do. Like sleep
Yeah.
all day and then go get money, a lot of money at one
Right.
point. I don't have the pressure of having to be somewhere every day and all of that. But the money, when I left, it was like I have to be able to get the same amount of money. I need to be able to, that part, right? You know how you go through that. But when I was in the life, I remember having a heart. Like I kind of, one day I was like, I don't understand how I still care about people. Like I don't understand how I
Girl.
still,
Yes.
I mean, like out of all of the stuff that I've been through and I've seen, and I have had men come to the club to treat people bad, like that that's what they came to do. Like they didn't come to have a good time. They didn't come to enjoy themselves. They came so that they could like take their frustration out on somebody. And I could see that. And I'm like, I would just talk to them like, okay, why are you talking to me like that? What are you doing? Like, don't why is this what you're doing in here? Like you
Mm-hmm.
already know we here. We gon' we here to entertain you, but you're here and you're upset. And you're here to abuse people who are here to help you. That don't make sense. And so, like you said, it's kind of like I know y'all been through some stuff, and I'm trying to figure out why I care. You know what I mean? But it's like it's just the God in you that shows up and just basically shows you who you are because you have all the rules and all the reason in the world why you should be mad and upset, but you still care enough to think about what is it that you need. I have needs. I know what I need. And I don't know if I'll ever get those needs. But maybe if you got what you need, I wouldn't really need as much.
Right.
And that made so much sense. Everything you said about making sure that the men get resources and they have safe spaces to speak. I hope that, something that comes out of this podcast is for people to start that. If y'all want to help the sex trafficking movement, and y'all don't follow the hashtag, listen to what the solutions are and come up with. Be on that side. Don't be on the awareness side. We don't care about awareness. I'm gonna say it. I don't know. I'm a. I don't know about anybody. I don't want to hear no more awareness. Okay, no more billboards, no more posters, no more
Yeah. Or
spending
controlled
$15,000 on
statistics.
a billboard. $15,000 on a
Yeah,
billboard.
send that to a direct service provider or grassroots organization. There are plenty. If you don't have one, Sisters of the Streets is one. You can send that 15,000 to Sisters of the Streets, and I promise we will do a lot more than put up a billboard. And everybody got their lane, you know what I'm saying? Like everybody has their lane, and I get that. But if everybody doing awareness, right? Okay, like great, we got awareness. So that billboard, somebody sees that billboard and they call. But if we don't got our resources and our community set up in place to receive those people that we are trying to reach, what good is it? Because we're really just pushing recidivism at a higher rate, right? Because if we, it's not even about resources first and foremost, it's about us as a society. Like, and I always say that people are like, well, what do I do? What do I do? I'm like, first look inward. Like, stop worrying about what you can do out here and go start with yourself. Look at your implicit biases. Look at how you think about when you hear the word prostitute, what do you think? When you hear the word pimp, what do you think? When you hear the word sex buyer, what do you think? Because those are all biases that you're projecting onto people. So when I come back into society, right? If I could feel that, you could give me a job all day, but if I don't feel in place, if I don't feel accepted, if I feel rejected, or I feel judged because you do know a little bit about my past, or you think you know a little bit about my story, I'm going to go right back to where I'm comfortable, because who in their right mind sits up in in a space that they are not comfortable and they feeling judged, right? So if I got a group of people, granted, if it's exploitive, abusive, it might not be healthy for me. It's where I'm comfortable. So we as a society have to create a comfortable environment for people that are trauma triggered, all of these things that are coming from lifestyles that we necessarily don't understand, but that we are ready to receive them with love. Because going back to what we were talking about earlier, I see a human in you, I see a person in you. It's not about what your label is, it's about the fact that you're a person trying to do better and trying to get to your whole and true self, right? And so um, forget how we make resources work, because of the people applying those resources, running these programs, putting up these billboards, answering these hotlines, answering these calls, if their hearts aren't changed for how they receive and perceive a person coming from this lifestyle or coming from a background that is not necessarily like their own, then those resources have no value, because the heart in it is not genuine. And so we have to first and foremost look inward. And before we ask what we could do, we got to change ourselves, because that changes our households. Then that changes our block on our street. That changes our society, our community. That changes our city. That changes our state. And that's how we start making real change, is by looking at ourselves versus me telling you what you could be doing different to make it better for everybody else. How about I take accountability for my actions and how I come off to the world and how I also receive the world. And it sounds super simple, but apparently it's not really that simple, because we're so wrapped up in being right and being the person who knows everything and being the only experience that can be the experience. And it's okay. Like if you walk into a room of 50 people, guess what? You get to learn 50 new things, because every single person in that room, whether it's something you don't want to do or whether it's something you do want to do with your life, you still get to learn from that person. I don't think we have that mentality enough when we go into interaction with other people. We're so ready to let people listen. It's like when people ask us like, how you doing? I'm not, most of the time you're not asking me to hear my response, you waiting to tell me how you're doing, right?
Right.
And so it's just like we have lost connection with self. And if we're not connected with self, how can we possibly connect with somebody else? And how can we possibly care about somebody's life being better if we don't care about that person?
Wow. You're right. I mean, I'm gonna tell you something. I'm excited about this podcast, and I'm just sitting here listening, and I'm so glad, and I'm so good on. It feels so good to just hear solution based conversation, and so I just wanted to let you know that we do have some people on Facebook who have been chiming in.
I see, that's
Rachel,
kind of cool. The little hey Rachel, that's cool. I'm like, who
yeah,
is this?
yeah. Rachel said those billboards aren't even realistic though, with the chains and stuff, like people with the
Oh,
the,
girl,
the
let's not even
handcuffs.
talk about sensationalism. Like, that's a whole nother, we got to go a whole nother 3 hours if we want to talk about sensationalism. Like,
Right.
come on. And that's, there's a disconnect, right? Like, and Rachel's right, because that's a disconnect, right? Like I said earlier, I'll go pee in the airport bathroom stall and I got a human trafficking. It says, if you're a victim of human trafficking, call this number. First of all,
With
that's
what
not what it says.
phone?
It sounds like a setup, first of all. Sound like you're trying to arrest me because, as we know, society has not created a safe space for victims to come. Anyways, they're more often than not criminalized, especially if your skin's not white. So that's just what it is. So we got to
Wow.
change that whole system, right? But if I'm looking and I see a little girl, she got blonde hair, blue eyes, and she got a black eye, and she in some chains, I'm not identifying with that picture. Some
Right.
people do, but my experience in urban domestic sex trafficking, right? Prostitution, hoeing, whatever. That's what I identified with. I'm like, oh, those poor people. That sucks. Like, but that's not a resource for me. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
verbiage matters.
Yes.
How imagery matters, inclusion matters. If all I'm seeing is females and I'm a male over here, I'm gonna be ashamed to call that number because I'm like, ain't nobody that looks like me is receiving your services. If all I see is white people and I'm black or brown or Asian or whatever skin color I identify with, if I don't see nobody that looks like me, I'm not about to call that. if
Mm-hmm.
I if I look at the verbiage matters.
Right.
How sensationalism is the most, uh, probably top three most toxic things within the anti-trafficking movement, that exists, because we're over here looking for this girl being shipped in a pickle jar. Like, I don't know if you ever seen that image. It's super disturbing. It's like a woman in like a jar, like she's a pick. Like, it's weird. I'm gonna send it
Oh
to you.
my God.
It's weird. Or they got like they got women that look like chicken wings, and like it looked like a chicken, like that you buy at the store. It's all types of weird stuff that you're looking for, right? Because it's pulling on people's hearts. Like, oh my gosh, that's horrible.
Yeah, the
But then
imagery. Yeah.
we're missing the girl walking in the mall with her Louis Vuitton purse, who's in a super abusive relationship, who's being sold every night out in LA. But that's not as appealing as the little child who is chained up. Or, and that's not to dismiss those people's experience. I have a lot of friends who have had that experience. But the importance of inclusion in different narratives within the anti-trafficking movement and when around the awareness issue of sex trafficking is important. It's important to talk about the strip clubs. It's important to talk about the spas. It's important to talk about the people that are familiar trafficked. It's important to talk about the girl who was just getting money with her boyfriend and thought she was in love. Like, it's important to talk about all the narratives, not just the ones that are going to pull on people's pockets, you know?
Right. Right. I want to read some more comments. Rachel said again, when she was in the game, she didn't even know she was being trafficked.
Right.
Um, Gina says people are pushing away those that are solution based, and there's definitely a barrier that needs to be destroyed. I just want to say that, for you to bring up the racial part of it, I wasn't really aware of sex trafficking until I left the club. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't really get how close I was to it.
Mm,
And once I did, it still took me some more time to think that about it as trafficking. I was just like, I don't want to be a prostitute. I just want to dance. I don't want to.
yeah.
I don't want to do the rest of the other stuff because I don't want to do all that. So, like, for you to use the word sex trafficking was a disconnect,
Right.
right? Like, like to describe the situation, it's kind of like that's not. I still don't know what you're talking about,
Right.
and a lot of times, even if you are in a messed up relationship, like think about if you're in a relationship that's not good, it's not good, but you're still there and you're not planning on leaving, you're going to defend being in it
Yeah.
before
Yeah.
you leave anyway. So
Nobody
like
likes to feel stupid. Nobody likes to be.
right,
Nobody
it's
likes
like,
to feel
okay,
stupid.
I say, you
Right.
know what, I'm good, I got it. Like, I mean, especially if you don't have any solutions, all you want to do is make me feel bad, make yourself feel good, come in, save the day, rescue me from this bad
And
guy,
then what?
and then you move on.
And then
Then
what?
you
Like, do I get to come live with you? Like, you gonna hook me up with the car? And I think people fail to realize that when we're talking about, again, when we're talking about things like sex trafficking resources or the anti-trafficking movement. And I want to make clear, I don't really identify myself in the anti-trafficking movement. I partner, collaborate, but I don't. That's not. There's a lot of re-exploitation, and really the anti-trafficking movement pimps out a lot of people just the same way that the game does, right? Just in different ways. But that's a whole nother podcast too.
I know it.
But, yeah,
We
but
could touch on that.
But
We
it's
could
like,
touch on it because we could touch on that because a lot of people are big, especially on Clubhouse now too, about telling their story. You know what I mean? It's like it's not about, you're not on here to tell your story. You're on here because you are a solution. You are on here because you have something that somebody could use to get them from somewhere to somewhere else. That's what mass exodus is about.
yeah.
Leaving something to get to somewhere else. And knowing that when they get to that other place, it's going to be something there to help them get even to further away from where they started. And so, like, telling your story, like, that's something you can do on Clubhouse now. That's not, you don't need,
They be
you could
talking
do that.
about this is a safe space. I'm like, bro, anybody can
How?
walk
How do you
into
know
this
that?
room. How is this a safe space? But whatever.
Yeah, yeah. It's like, is this safe? It's safe because what? We're on the phone. Can't nobody get me? But,
Ain't nobody
and
see
it's like,
right.
and just like people taking it, people love these keywords. They're taking the keywords, the hashtag. I thought called like hashtag raping. Like they just take the hashtags and just attach to whatever they're doing
Mm-hmm.
and just move forward and act like because they have been in certain trainings, they can say certain stuff. And so I appreciate you bringing up the fact that a lot of the organizations re-exploit because when it comes time for funding,
Mm-hmm.
they stand in the line, they get it first and they're gone and they don't have nothing but awareness on their website. They want awareness, they want you to know about it, and they want you to pay them to tell you what you done heard already. And that bothers me to no end because when a woman call an organization that I work with and they need a car, they need a job, they need somewhere to live, they need somebody to pay the application fee for an apartment, don't nobody got nothing.
Yeah, and the people that do, and this is the part that people don't pay attention to either. The people that do provide those things. So, for example, Sisters of the Streets provides things like that. We do, and that's why we don't get much funding because our funding can't really be documented in the way that the government wants it to be documented. You people don't have resources like you said for application fees or things like, I mean, it's I've paid for people's emotional support animals food because the animal's on a specific diet, right? And if that animal can't be healthy or that person can't afford to keep that animal, then guess what? Their mental health goes down the drain. They're triggered and they're right back into their survival patterns. And so we come in to try to financially support that, to limit that regressive crisis. So basically, putting people back into that survival pattern, and that can be triggered through anything. That could be because I just don't feel good because I have a PTSD attack and I don't want to go to work, but I don't want to have to explain that to my boss. So now I'm taking a week off work and now I'm risking getting fired or I'm a week behind on my rent. And now that's putting me in a space where I'm like, ooh, I got to go back into the club or I got to go hit this track so I could go get some money, right? Or I got to call this old sugar daddy or whatever the case is because you're old, no matter how far out the game you are, no matter how far away from your exploitation you are, those patterns, unless you have memory loss or whatever, you don't forget those patterns. You don't forget how you survived, right? That's embedded in you. And so we're forgetting that people that are providing these services, and that's where I was going with this, are usually fellow survivors, fellow lived experience experts that are not getting a lot of funding, who are putting in blood, sweat, and tears, who are not getting paid for a lot of the work that they're doing because you don't turn your healing on and off. Like a lot of resources, they get to go in and clock in at 8 o'clock and clock out at 5, and you get to leave your work at work, right? Whether I'm supporting other survivors or not, I still have to identify and work on my own healing 24/7. So I don't get to clock out of my experience. I don't get to really clock out of, these aren't just people coming to me for resources. These are my friends. Like these are the people that I was in the streets with. These are people that I was in the streets with whose family is in the streets or whatever. So I don't really get to clock out. And so I'm getting burnt out because there's not enough funding to grassroots organizations. So then guess what? Now recidivism is at my front door because now I'm burnt out. I don't want to deal with support services. So me being a solution is not a solution anymore because now I'm right back in square one, probably back in the game, probably relapse, probably back into these toxic patterns, all because I wanted to get out. I wanted to help, but there's no proper funding for me to be able to provide the services. And so a lot of times we're forgetting that, well, we're trying to save people from this lifestyle. There's a lot of people who've been out this game for years and years and years who are trying to do amazing work that is solution focused, that we got the solutions, we just don't got the money to keep doing it and burning and burning and burning out. And so we're really being a part of the problem by not adapting and expanding the way that funding is given to grassroots organizations, and by not supporting those that are running grassroots organizations, because we're really pushing people back into that lifestyle. So when we're pulling people out, we got OGs going right back in, or really losing their lives because they just can't take it anymore. So they go to numb out with a substance, and that's that time that it was a little bit too much, or they go back to that, abusive partner where that abuse was a little too much that time. And unfortunately, we're so adamant about being the hero that sometimes we're forgetting about the people who have worked so hard to get out and stay out. And then we're also pulling people out to what? Like I'm telling you to leave, the strip club, and you making $5,000 a night, you got a $500 car note, and you got a mortgage because of the lifestyle you built. And I'm telling you to come and leave that and come to my, program where you got to live with 6 other females who you don't know their personalities. You got to go work at Walmart, and then you got to get on food stamps and financial assistance through the county. Because why? Because I tell you that your lifestyle isn't acceptable in my book or in society.
Whew,
I
that
mean,
part right there. So let me ask you this question. I'm gonna tell you how I feel after you tell me. When
okay.
you actually do decide to make the decision to leave, what is your attitude toward money? What change do you have to go through about money to be able to stay away and not go backwards?
So I'd say it like this. So for me, it was a little different because I was always, if I wasn't giving my money to a pimp who was spending on some stupid stuff, then I was buying shrimp and crab legs when I was renegading and buying fancy hotels. So I was never really like, my whole thing was like, money is money. So my mentality towards money was more of like on a emotional level, was more on like, I don't have to I don't have to be able to offer you something monetary for you to love me. That was more of my personal struggle with money. It was never about really transitioning my mindset. When things got hard, yeah, is it hard to be like, oh, but I know how I could get some quick money? Yeah, that happens. But for me, it wasn't like I had to leave this like luxurious lifestyle to to shift my mindset. But I think that whatever your personal relationship with money is, that has to come, and is only going to come through a more of a spiritual, I guess, foundation. And that doesn't happen overnight. And that's why that money relationship doesn't change. And you have to be able to be willing to put in the work to learn about your relationship with money, right? Like there's some amazing survivors right now. Actually, my friend Megan, she just put out a book about finances for survivors, like a survivor's guide to finances. And it takes us being willing to step into learning about our relationships, our mentalities, our thought processes that have been embedded in us, to be able to change and shift those, identify them and then shift them, right? And so everybody's journey with money is going to look different. But I think what has to happen ultimately is us valuing our lives, our hearts, our passion, and our purposes over monetary items. And I don't think that that can happen without community and without us being able to recognize through empowerment within ourselves that we are valuable outside of our relationship with money, outside of our ability to get money. And in order to be able to walk through that process, community with other survivors, other people who have had those same struggles, is important. And I believe that creating sisterhood and brotherhood with people that have similar experiences as you is so valuable in your healing for that particular reason, because they can share their journeys and their struggles, and that can help you realize within yourself where your value is outside of finances. Does that answer your question or make sense?
Yes, it does. I have a question from the audience. I'm gonna go ahead and put it up. Rachel is asking, what is the book? I'm guessing she's asking about the book for
Oh,
your
Megan's
friend's book.
book.
Hmm.
Let me get it. I'm gonna go on Facebook right now. She just dropped it. It is called. So Megan Lundstrom. She runs an organization called the Avery Center. Where is her book? I think it's just called Survivor's Guide. Survivor's Guide. Rachel, if you could find me on social media and like shoot me a message, I can send you a link. I can't find it right this second, but I can send you a
That's her
link.
IG. So yeah, follow her at Sisters of the Streets. I wanted to just say that for me, you hit on the point of it being a spiritual journey, right? Because I
Yeah.
have come to the conclusion that I have more now than I did when I had more money. That don't make sense to me. And so,
Mm-hmm.
um, but I had no peace in my mind. Like I couldn't form a thought. Like my anxiety level was crazy high. My depression was like ridiculous. I was always lashing out. My brain would just not turn off. And so me counting my money would bring me a little bit of peace. Like, okay, I don't have to worry about that. You know what I mean? Like I would just
Right.
make sure that I have enough. So because I'm worried, like that worried feeling just wouldn't go away. But just knowing that I have to give up something to get my mind to calm down, it got to the point where I'm like, I have to give up something, and that's what, because this money is not enough. You know what I mean? Like I'm not financially struggling, but like my ability to have a clear thought, my ability to go into a place without looking around and just being extra paranoid all the time and just being on alert, being aware, like the hypervigilance was literally like burning me on, two ends, and I was really, really hurt by that. You know what I mean? Like, and so I gave up money. It made me just say, as long as I have enough to function, you know what I'm saying? As long as I have enough to live, I'll be all right. And it got to a point where I said, well, God had showed me. He said that favor is more than finances. Like if you have the favor from me, then you will be able to make it. And that's the only thing I was worried about. I wasn't worried about thriving and having more in abundance and a whole lot. I just needed to be able to know that I'm not gonna die. I'm not gonna be in a messed up situation. And it was crazy because my situation got really messed up before it got better, which was very scary. Um, it got real bad. So I had to just deal, but I said what I'm not going to do is go backwards. And so just helping women understand that you're going to lose some things before you actually gain them, but you just have to let it go. You know what I mean? Just let it go. Um it's okay to let some stuff go so that you can move forward. You know what I mean? And you're going to get the things that you need into your life, not necessarily go backwards. But I wanted to ask you that because we have a lot of things in common. And I want to bring you back on the screen, and I want to ask you a question about your organization. What is it that you need? What is it that your organization needs specifically help with? Anybody who is listening, if you have anything to offer, anybody on any of my show, make sure you reach out and figure out how you can connect to somebody who's already doing work so that your effort, you're not reinventing the wheel, and you're just putting resources in the hands of somebody who is going to um bless. Hold on, somebody just put up a comment. Rachel said God replaces it all and then some. That's so true, Rachel. Like,
Yes.
that's great. But I'm gonna say this: when you have when you are a resource pool, it's not your job to have everything. You are connected to other people who have stuff. So I want you to express what it is that you need specifically so that these people can find you and
Yeah.
get it to you so that you can do what you've been doing and not make it so hard for you.
Well, I appreciate that, and I appreciate everything that you were saying. I got kicked out. I kicked myself out, but I was listening to what you were saying and agree with what Rachel was saying. For right now, just to be completely transparent, I'm on burnout mode, and so I've taken a hiatus, kind of from Sisters of the Streets, just to revamp and reframe, and got some really amazing things going to happen at the end of this year. Um, but I want to be able to do them correctly. So as of right now, we are always providing direct services. See my son. Sorry. Malachi, can you go? Okay. Thank you. Okay, bye-bye. Thank you. He always got to make himself seen. Sorry.
It's okay. I'm surprised mine ain't came in yet.
I'm like, where is his head coming through? But right now we could really benefit from a CPA, a nonprofit tax lawyer. We have run into a couple struggles because another thing that not too many people talk about is a lot of survivors come out this game in this life and want to start businesses, want to start nonprofits. But there's not too many resources. There's some really great ones like Rebecca Benner Initiative that kind of mentors through these things, but there's not too many resources to help people understand the legal side, the tax side. And so I ran into a few problems with my nonprofit when it comes to that. So we could really use a lawyer that would be willing to offer discounted services, if not pro bono services, to help us get back on track with our tax exempt status so that we can continue to do the work that we're doing. And with that, we also really could benefit from somebody who is wanting to volunteer some time to do some book work, and some like more administrative type of duties, to help me keep myself in line, because I'm great with talking and networking and getting people's wheels turning, but I am not good with administrative stuff, and I am not good with numbers, and I know how to count money, but that's about it. Other than that, I don't like to do anything with numbers. So right now, we really could use those things on the side to be able to keep us afloat, to be able to continue to get grant funding in the middle, the spaces that we are comfortable receiving funding from. Because when we get a little bit of money, we're able to do a lot, because what you don't lose from the game is your resourcefulness. And one thing that I knew how to do was make something happen in the game from nothing. So I I transferred that into my nonprofit work, and I actually, um, also, if anybody is interested in helping publish, we actually am co-authoring an amazing book with my friend Armand King, who does a lot of great work in this community as well. We're doing a co-author book called From the Streets to the Suites, and it's basically a book on transferable skills, um, and really teach a guide on how to teach people how to turn their street skills, survival skills into corporate muscle, and really start your own businesses, entrepreneurial skills, because we have so many skills that we obtain. It's just sometimes somebody doesn't come to tell us, hey, you're really good at that, right? Or it's deemed as negative or labeled negative. And so how do we transition that? Because that's a big part of the solution too, right? Is like, if people are empowered to do something different, a lot of times people don't want to be doing the bad stuff that they're doing. They don't want to harm the community. They don't want to harm other people. It's just we don't necessarily know that there's other options. So if I could come and I could tell you that, and not only tell you, but teach you how to transfer your skills into your own business, into the corporate world, that's a huge part of the solution. Because now, okay, now you ain't got no excuses. If I could teach a young woman how to go, and if her excuses, and I know this, you were asking about services, but I just want to say that if your excuse to not get out the game is, but I make $1,000 a day. Okay, cool. If I could teach you how to go and create and be a trainer where you could get paid $1,000 to go and speak to your expertise, not share your story, but speak to your expertise, because I can teach you and guide you how to create expertise out of your experience. What's your excuse now? Now you can make $1,000 without having to sell your body or to sit in 8-inch heels. Because I don't care what nobody says, those heels are not comfortable, and you get blisters, and they give you back problems, and they give you knee problems and all types of stuff, right? And so if I could teach you, I get that you need the money, right? So let me walk through the fire, and that's the beauty of lived experience. Let me walk through the fire and be willing to not keep everything that I've learned through my healing, and let me give that to other people, so that it's not just somebody telling you what you should be doing, it's somebody telling you you can do it, because I already did it. right?
Right.
And so there's a difference between somebody coming and being like, "Yeah, you should get out the strip club because you're more valuable than that," and blah 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 blah, and Jesus loves you, and okay, great, Jesus loves me, but I still got these bills, right? And so if I can come and say, I get it. Let me walk alongside you to teach you how I did it, and if it's something that's appealing to you, then you do it too. And
Right.
just sometimes people telling you that you got a different skill set, um, is very helpful. And so Armand and I are really pushing this book. We have a podcast out where we interview amazing people that own amazing businesses, that came from these, survival streets. And so we really want to empower people, within the system, within, poverty, to be able to use the skills that they already have to manifest greatness and create generational wealth and create those generational cycle breakings, for ourselves, because ain't nobody coming to do it for us. So we got to do it for each other. And so on right now, what Sisters of the Streets needs is really people with skills willing to volunteer their time with taxes, um, lawyers, a lawyer to help us with some legal side, legal stuff with some grant checks and things like that, and publishers and editors for our book. So I think that those
Awesome.
would be probably our top three. And we always need some money for direct services. We provide hotels for a lot of women. If there's any hotel owners that would like to sponsor a room once a month in their area, that's always helpful, because I always have somebody needing a hotel, needing a safe space to stay. And really, anyway, we all got skills and we all got gifts. So anyway that you would like to be involved, hit me up. I'm sure that I can partner with you to use what you're already great at to be a part of the solution.
Awesome. And I just want to say that since you said that, we all have skills, we all have gifts. One of the things that I do is I work with women in transition out of sex work, and we talk about, just as you get to know people, you start to see and notice what it is that they are good at, like you said, and just help people figure out what it is that they can do. Like, I'm not guaranteeing you that you're going to make the same money. It's about being able to survive outside of that industry. You don't have to do that. You know what I mean? You do have something else you can use. And so just knowing that you are a salesperson, just know that you are. If you don't know that, that's what you are. I mean, you can sell. I mean, when I left, I sold cars when I left, and I sold a car a day my first week, and they were like, "Huh?" And I was like, "You don't understand.
Yeah,
You don't
y'all
understand.
need to know. Don't worry
You don't
about it.
understand. It
Just
ain't nothing you
just
gonna
get
get. I
excited.
can't explain that to you." But that was just kind of epic that you said that, and I just wanted to know. Oh, I just wanted to say too that as I introduced Tag Team TV actually stands for Talents, Abilities, and Gifts to Empower Ambitious Members. And
Mm,
so the vision for it is to actually be a platform where people who come from the life, even if you just come from jail, it doesn't have to be sex work. It
mm-hmm.
could be just become from a place to another place. If you're trying to get to somewhere else, and if it is inspirational, educational, encouraging, or just entertaining and have all of those other components, it is welcome on Tag Team TV. But I wanted to just put it out there also that if you are a person who's coming from the industry and coming from a lifestyle, that's the platform where you can promote your services and it won't cost your arm and leg. I'm not trying to beat nobody over the head. But this is
Right.
something that God gave me, and it's actually launching today. And I've been working on
Okay.
this in private,
That's
but
amazing.
it's something that, like, just being a resource for real, like, and to be a part of just creating the lane, because nobody's going to give us nothing, to just make sure that it gets done, because that's what we need. And so
Yeah.
to hear that you're doing that over there in California, that's where she's at, yeah. And I'm in Atlanta, I'm in Georgia. Like, the world is not as big as it was because of the internet, but we have to have an opportunity to put ourselves out there. And so I wanted to make sure that Sisters of the Street had an opportunity to put your needs out there. And at any point, whoever's watching this, they can find you. I've been putting up the IG. She got the website at the bottom.
I know it's
Uh,
so cool. I like this
that
platform.
Clubhouse, if you follow on Club, if you're not doing none of that stuff, but you are on Clubhouse, you can go in and you can have a conversation, learn more. If you want to get some, if you have a business, Okay, and you are in California. What city in California are you in?
So I actually live in Arizona right now due to the
Okay.
pandemic, but I'm from Oceanside. Shout out to Oceanside.
Okay.
But if people don't know Oceanside because it's smaller, it's San Diego County. So San
That's
Diego.
actually the only place in California that I've ever been, Oceanside. But anyway.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But yeah, I just want to get like just businesses that are local that can offer somebody an opportunity to work. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Just anything that you can do. Don't look and say, well, I'm not in that and I don't have a nonprofit. You have something. If you have a business, you have a position to
Everybody.
empower somebody. And you are willing to pay a livable wage, that's something that is needed. And so I'm just
Yeah.
really grateful that you took out the time. I know you don't feel well. Um, to
No.
talk today.
Yes.
And I'm just really grateful. But before we leave, I want to just thank you for everything that you're doing and just encourage you because burnout is real, is realer than real.
Yeah.
Doing something that what you do that you do from your heart, that you do as your mission and vision, for your life.
Yeah.
So I just want you to take care of yourself and um, come back and be stronger than ever.
Always, always. We are resilient, and same to you. And burnout is necessary sometimes for us to be able to revamp and be able to create vision. And God is putting a lot of vision in my foresight, and putting a lot of great people around me. And when you're true to your calling, the right people, it sounds cliche, but your vibe attracts your tribe, and people are going to fall into place, and it baffles you for a minute because you're like, wait, all y'all think like me, like, wait, how are we all? But it's just because you're being authentic and you're being true, and vulnerability is going to be what saves our communities and saves our next generations. And these conversations are necessary. There's a lot of work to be done, but we all got a part. If even that's just rehumanizing people, like we was talking about, that's enough. um, that's enough. And don't just be, like I said earlier, bandwagon awareness providers or bandwagon advocates. If you're going to share a post about the topic, learn a little bit about the topic and learn about it from people that have the experiences, that we're trying to support them from getting out of, right? Take a minute to have conversations with people that you normally wouldn't, and learn from people. You can always learn from somebody. And so when you keep that mindset, you are being a part of the solution on a daily level. And it doesn't take you to own a business or to have a nonprofit or none of that. Just be a good person. Like, be a good person to everybody, not just who you feel like you could relate to or who you feel is worthy of being kind to. Be kind to everybody and watch how that changes the world around you. So
Yeah.
I appreciate the time, and I look forward to just connecting more. And shout out to Rachel. What's up, girl? I'll talk to you hopefully on social media, but she been hanging in, having a couple
Yes.
too. So that's
Yes.
what's up.
That's sweet. Thank you, Rachel. And thank you, everybody who's been tuning in. I appreciate y'all so much. And I'm going to continue to do this podcast for people who needs to be out here.
Yeah.
And so I don't want to hold you that much longer. But if anybody needs to reach out, I'm going to put up her information one more time. Her IG is at Sisters of the Streets with all the underscores in between each word.
Mm-hmm.
The website is on the bottom, sistersofthestreets.org. On Clubhouse, she is Jaimee with two E's with the AIMEE_Johnson on Clubhouse. Okay. So again, I thank y'all for tuning in. And until next time, I'll see y'all later.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.